Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk a little bit more about short Fat Otaku, aka Dev, who has decided to come down from his ivory centrist TM tower, that is totally centrist, you guys, even though he hates centrists like me, in order to provide us with some more enlightening words of his wisdom. In this case, why Dev thinks it's okay for kids to be killed because their parents do bad stuff. Because that's just good old-fashioned liberal principles, don't you know? According to Dev anyways. And totally not a fundamentally anti-liberal thing to do. But I do believe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, so let's take it from the top. This story actually begins not at all with Dev, but instead with a conversation between JD Vance and Bryan Krasenstein. As JD Vance states, quote, "Killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military." To which Bryan replies with, quote, "Killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime." To which JD Vance replies with, quote, "I don't give a shit what you call it." So yeah, this is in reference to that Venezuelan drug boat that got blown up by the US military. It is of note for the record that this being a boat out in open sea means that the capacity for collateral damage is very, very limited, to say the very least. With that said though, this is where Dev gets involved, as he provides a quote tweet where he states, quote, "All of the hand-wringing about Obama's drone strikes without the consent of Congress never actually meant anything." To which Bateman Bale replies with a quote tweet stating, quote, "The problem with Obama is that he was killing Americans, not even remotely the same." To which Dev replies with, quote, "What Americans? As far as I know, there was one and he was a terrorist. Don't be in a terrorist camp, loser, laughing my ass off." Aspiring Devil replies with, quote, "No one has ever actually been able to tell me what Obama did that scarred the mind of the right so bad. That wasn't just weird anarchist and libertarian LARPing or conspiracy theories." I reply to Aspiring Devil saying, quote, "Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki was a 16-year-old US citizen killed by an Obama drone strike and was not a terrorist himself. His father was a terrorist and was killed in a separate drone several days before strike, but Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki again was not a terrorist." It is of note for the record that the US government never even tried to argue that Abdul Rahman himself was anything other than a 16-year-old US citizen. Instead, the justification for why it was okay to kill a 16-year-old US citizen was because the parent was being irresponsible by being a terrorist. And yes, it is true that the parent was a terrorist and was therefore being an irresponsible parent, but that doesn't just magically mean it's okay for the US government to kill a 16-year-old US citizen. At this point, Dev decides to provide a quote tweet, a response to yours truly, by stating, quote, "He wasn't a terrorist, but his father was, holds about as much weight as he wasn't an illegal immigrant, but his father was." Given the previous context that we have already provided, as well as the fact that Dev is openly in favor of the drug boat getting destroyed, which yes, that is something I can agree with Dev on, what with it being in an isolated area where the ability to kill or injure innocents is very limited, and given the fact that Dev is refusing to condemn the drone strike of a 16-year-old US citizen because of the actions of the father, well, given all of that context, Dev is now taken up the position that it's perfectly okay to kill the relatives of people who do bad things. Hell, this could even potentially apply to people that are associated with people who do bad things. This is as an extreme a position of guilt by association as you can get. And this is, as some people have pointed out in response, the sort of position the woke scolds would hold when canceling the relatives and friends of people who made politically incorrect takes. That is the extreme that Dev has fallen to, and is yet another reason why I continue to oppose Dev, because his ideology is such that will try to enforce its values upon everyone else, even through the use of state-sponsored violence if necessary. Dev must be opposed. Dev must be defeated as a direct result. And as a final piece of irony, I will mention that when I say oppose, I am in fact using Dev's own terminology whenever he says, "We must oppose X group," or "We must oppose Y group." I am applying what Dev means when he says we must oppose to himself, because I see that as absolutely necessary. I have seen that as necessary from the very beginning with this little feud between me and him. I do not believe that peace with Dev is a reasonable thing, because he will not allow for peace. He will try to enforce his values upon you whether you like it or not. And thus the correct response, the only reasonable response, is to react accordingly. We must oppose Dev.